Today we'll be looking at what a soft and bite-sized diet means for Rosemary. A soft and bite-sized diet means that food must be soft, moist with the gravy, and cut up into bite-sized pieces. That is no bigger than 1.5 by 1.5 centimeters. It's important that Rosemary's food follows these guidelines. Otherwise, it will put her at risk of choking and chest infections. Please refer to Rosemary's mealtime management plan in her file for more information on her diet and food ideas. There are 3 tests that you should always use when checking that Rosemary's foods are safe for her to eat. First, is the food cut up into bite-sized pieces, no bigger than 1.5 by 1.5 centimeters, which is about the size of your thumbnail. So you can see this baked bean passes the test. Is it moist? Is there a sauce or gravy running through it? And thirdly, is it soft? You can use a fork to press down on the food. If the food doesn't change shape permanently, so you can see with the bread, it presses down but then it bounces back up, that means it doesn't pass the test. Or if it's hard to squish, like a biscuit, which you can only squish if you put a lot of pressure on it, that means it's too hard. Let's try with the baked beans and see if that passes the test. Now if we squish it, you can see it changes shape permanently. It doesn't bounce back up. So the baked beans pass the test. Now I'll be showing you how to make a soft and bite-sized sandwich from Rosemary. First, make sure you have wholemeal or white bread with no seeds. Cut the crust off. Then cut it up into bite-sized pieces, so about the size of your thumbnail. Next, we'll need to add a soft and moist filling. As you can see, the bread is quite dry, so this wouldn't pass the second test of the soft and bite-sized test if she just ate it like this. So in my case, we have baked beans, but you can also use tuna and olive oil mixed up with lactose-free yogurt, or you could mash up some avocado with some hummus. So we'll add that soft and moist filling to the bread. Now make sure that there's enough for the bread to soak into it. We might need to add a bit more. Next, you can add some appropriate fillings that are soft and bite-sized. So in our case, we'll add a little bit of cheese that will melt and then mix up, which will then become appropriate for Rosemary to eat. And we've also got some avocado that we'll add in at the end after it's been melted. So let's pop this into the microwave first to let the cheese melt. So here we go. Now to make sure that everything is covered up in the gravy and that the cheese is spread out and not stringy, which won't be appropriate for Rosemary, let's mix it, give it a really good mix and break up that cheese and let that bread soak in all the juices from the baked beans. There we go. And then now you can add in the other toppings. So we've got just a little bit of avocado here, which we'll need to make sure meets the standard. So we'll have to, you can either mash it up in with the food, or you can cut it up with your fork. There you go, so either method is all right, and we'll mix that around again. The other thing just to note with baked beans is that sometimes it can have a skin, which then wouldn't be appropriate. But you can see with this brand that there isn't a skin that peels off, so it's okay. Now, let's make sure that it meets our 3 tests for a soft and bite-sized diet. So first of all, is it in bite-sized pieces? We'll check that. So that's about the size of my thumbnail. That passes the test. Second, is it moist? And you can already see that it's really nice and moist. There's a sauce, and even the bread is soaking it up, which is exactly what we want. And third of all, is it soft? So let's just grab a little bit and use the fork test. So remember, when I press it down, it should stay and not bounce back up, which is exactly what it does. So it squishes and it doesn't bounce back up. So it passes the soft test too. Now, just a few more things to note for rosemary. Spinach is something that we've recommended for rosemary from a nutrition perspective. It's just important to note that if you are using fresh spinach, that you peel off the stem, because that won't be appropriate, before you put it into food. And spinach must always be cooked extremely well and cut up into really small pieces for rosemary to be able to eat. Raw spinach will never be appropriate. But as you can see in some of the recipe ideas, we've suggested that you put in spinach, so either fresh without the stems or chopped up frozen spinach, into the slow cooker with her meal right at the very beginning. That's really important to do to make sure that the spinach has lots of time to wilt and to break down before you go over it again with a fork to cut up, to make sure that it's really small and bite-sized. If you're not able to cook the spinach that way, then please don't use it. Otherwise, it will be a choking hazard.